thank you for the invitation to come share a little bit about how webQDA can help you with your literature review. And some of you perhaps are new to this software and what it can do. So I'd like to share a little bit about some of the possibilities that this has for us and the ways that it's particularly useful here with literature reviews. So I'm going to share the screen, see some of the slides. There we go. Let me know if you have any problem seeing them. But the big problem that we're working on now is that for many parts of the world, our normal research activities have been interrupted. And in fact, many research projects are just on hold while we're waiting for things to improve. So can we do qualitative studies while we are working from home, or while we don't have access to our offices, while our offices are closed in many places, those in a more academic setting? I imagine here in many of the countries that we represent here, the classrooms are not fully available right now, and many offices are closed. So how can we do qualitative research? This is where some tools like webQDA can become extremely valuable. We need to transition our qualitative studies from an in-person way that we used to do things to an online way. Like now we're doing focus groups, but instead of gathering a group of people together in a room, we're using platforms like this one, Zoom or Google Meet or one of the other options. Instead of doing interviews in person, we're using social media like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger to ask people a question and have them record an audio or video file with their answer. Instead of asking a large group of people some questions, or standing in a busy street and asking people who go by for their answers, now we're using polls through Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, or one of many online survey platforms. For public opinion, we can use some social media sites. Twitter is one example where we can see what people are saying about a certain topic, especially following hashtags. And we can even get some feedback from our own friends, family members, contacts on social media sites like Facebook and LinkedIn. And I've even started to see structured, you could say literature review, but structured reviews at least of videos on YouTube to see what people, especially some of the perhaps most viewed videos about a certain topic, to analyze what those have in common and perhaps what is missing. And there are many other options, and one particular option that we want to highlight today is the use for literature reviews, how this can be an option for us to continue researching while we're perhaps not in our office as usual. Now, we need to say here that it is possible to do all of these activities, including literature review, without any specific software. We could go perhaps the way that some of you learned to do this process. When I did my initial thesis, my literature review was on index cards, little pieces of paper that I organized out on my table with handwritten notes on one side and the citation, the bibliographic reference, on the other side of the piece of paper. It's possible, but it's very time consuming. And it's very difficult to keep a saved copy of your work. And it's even more difficult to share that work with your colleagues, with perhaps a thesis advisor, with someone else who needs to see it. And sometimes then we try to transition to a computer program that was not really made for this sort of study. Maybe we design tables and copy and paste in a Word document, or perhaps we try to organize ourselves in some tables in an Excel spreadsheet. It's possible. I've seen studies done that way too, but since these tools are not really made for this kind of study, they are definitely not optimal. And there are many features that would be very useful that are lacking in these sorts of software. So that's where webQDA comes in. webQDA is part of a line of qualitative data analysis platforms and softwares. That is what the QDA stands for. And when we highlight that it's web, what we mean is that this whole software platform is not something that you install on your computer. It's something that you can access through the internet. It's designed to help with any non-numeric and unstructured data, from interviews to pictures to videos to literature reviews. And with this, we can edit, view, and link documents, including uploading all of the metadata for a group of journal articles, for example, and then connecting that metadata with the full text of each of those articles. We can then get some useful insights out of all of this. Of course, webQDA is there to help us organize this process, to keep all of our notes there in one place and in an orderly fashion. But more than that, it's there to help us start finding answers to some questions from this data. Things as simple as, where are certain topics most common in the last few years? Or what seem to be some of the changes over the last few years in the tendencies or in the number of articles published about certain topics? These sorts of questions we can ask when we have our sources organized in this platform. So what can webQDA do for you? Well, it allows you to work with text. That's what we're mainly focusing on today. Text both as a PDF or a Word document of the journal article or book chapter or whatever literature we're reviewing, but also text including metadata, things like what journal was it published in, or in what year was it published, and the name of the author. But just to keep in mind, this is also a platform that can handle audio, images, and video files. So that makes it particularly useful for other sorts of qualitative projects, including interviews, focus groups, and detailed image analysis. Now, you can upload your own files, and you can also link to external files. YouTube, as we mentioned, is one main way to use videos, but you can also use Dropbox. If we need more space, we can use our Dropbox and link to that. We can add in socio-demographic information for our data if we're talking more about interviews. And here in the context of a literature review, that means more about the bibliographic information, the metadata. Then we can start to encode, or I've heard some authors refer to this as tagging, the relevant section of our source materials to highlight key topics or key themes that appear in several of our sources. Then we can generate word clouds and most frequently used word lists. Those are both useful, but to me, perhaps the area where webQDA shines the most is in the ability to output tables of these codes or these topics and themes that we have encountered in our sources, and then organize them by the socio-demographic information or the bibliographic information of our choice. Things like, where is this topic more common? In which region? Or when was this most common? In which year or which group of years? And a key part here is that we can then share our project with other team members and collaborate online. The interface for this software platform is available in English and also in Spanish and Portuguese. And with this, we can collaborate if we're across the city or across the country or across the world. That's the key strength of using this platform, which is all based online. Rather than having it just installed on my computer so that I can see my project, when we host it all on an online platform, then I can easily invite other collaborators from any part of the world to join my project. But not only that, we can also let our administrators, our advisors, our colleagues, anyone else that we would like to share our project with, we can give them access to see everything that we have in our project without needing to pay anything. they don't need a paid subscription just to see what we're doing. Now, of course, if we want to also invite them to contribute and to add to what we're doing, then of course they would need a subscription for that. But this is very useful when perhaps we have a manager or a leader in our area that wants to keep an eye on what we're doing. We can then share our project with them so they can see how we're advancing. This is also particularly useful in the academic setting between a thesis advisor and their advisee. That way they can share a view of the whole project together. But also, perhaps we just want to share with our colleagues, our friends, and family members what we're doing, and they can see that without needing to pay anything. So for academic context, this is very useful for researchers, for students, for research teams, because we can all work together. We don't need to all be at our computers at the same time working together. We can work each one as they have availability, but we can work all at the same time, meaning there are no limits to how many people can be connected to the same project at once. We can all be working on different parts of the project at the same time. Not a problem. And perhaps some here are more on the business side. In the business context, webQDA is especially helpful with unstructured data, things like customer opinions about a product or an advertisement. But one thing that we should leave clear is that, to use an analogy here, webQDA is to qualitative research, and tools like SPSS are to quantitative research, as the word processor, like Microsoft Word, is for writing. Now, if that wasn't very clear, what we mean is that the human factor is always critical. Yes, different software, different tools can help us do certain things, but to put it bluntly, my text editor doesn't write alone. I can't just start Microsoft Word, hit a few buttons, come back in a few hours, and my paper is finished. That's not how it works. And it's the same with software tools like webQDA. They can help us organize our sources, in this case, or our data. They can help us get new insights out of that data, but we can't just hit a few buttons and it will do the whole research for us. They're very useful. They can save us a lot of time, but they're not automatic, let's say. So I'll try to share these slides with you a little later. We have several real examples of studies that have been published using webQDA. So perhaps if you're curious on that part, that are these sorts of studies viable in the sense of, can you get published in a large journal, say in Scopus or Web of Science, with these sorts of articles? Yes, you definitely can. And we have some examples here. But let's just say we should deal with one of the biggest sources of disappointment with webQDA. We should deal with that right from the beginning. It is true that the early stages of a qualitative project are laborious and time-consuming. There's no way around that. It is going to take some time to organize our sources and to select each of these common themes that we find within our sources and to annotate those or encode them, as it's called here in webQDA. That process takes time. That said, it is much slower if we try to do this without a specialized software platform. If we try to do this in Word or Excel, or if we try to do this on paper with little pieces of paper, the way I did my thesis, it's possible, but it will take a lot more time and be much more difficult to share with others. Also, along the way, throughout the whole process, there is definitely a high level of dependence on the work of the researchers, meaning that there are some tasks that perhaps we could delegate to a friend, a family member, a student to help us with, maybe to find if we give them some references, say if they can track down some of the full text articles or if they can scan in a book chapter for us. Yes, we can delegate some things like that, but the core tasks of organizing our sources and looking for common themes within each of them, no, that can't really be delegated. And of course, for those coming from a more quantitative background, where we work with scales and questionnaires, where we process with statistics and we get some nice tables, or we can say with a certain level of certainty that we have proven or disproven a given hypothesis. If we come with that perspective to a qualitative study like a literature review, we might be somewhat disappointed that we aren't going to have the same kind of numbers as a result that we would have from a quantitative study. We can't use some formulas and get a confidence interval for our results. That's not really how it works in a qualitative study. And just to give an idea of how webQDA is structured, we just have these three main areas. We've got the sources, that's where we will be adding our documents and our metadata. We have the coding system, where we will be looking for and organizing those key themes and topics that appear in our different sources. And then we get into the questioning system, where we can start digging through all of that information that we've added and organized, and then start asking questions and getting some real results. That's where the insights come in. So that's more at a theoretical level, but let's actually go in and see what it looks like. Let's go into the webQDA website. I'm going to put that up here on the screen so that we can follow along, just get a little bit of an idea what this looks like. Here we go. And I've got a few examples that I want to quickly try to show you. So this is what the webQDA page looks like once we're logged in. You can have as many projects as you'd like going at any one time. You're not limited on number of projects. And as you can see in my simple example here, 2 of these projects are mine, and 1 of these is a project from a student who then shared it with me. So we've got several projects going, but let's try to do something quick here to get an idea of how we could get some sources in for a literature review. Let's start with Scopus. This is perhaps one of the more common databases at international level. So if we go into Scopus, we can do a search. We're not going to spend a lot of time on how to do a full search in a database like Scopus or Web of Science, because it's a very involved topic. But let's just do a basic search here. We're going to search for COVID-19, since it's such a pressing concern right now. And wait, once it loads, we're going to sort them by most cited. So by cited from highest to lowest. All right, here are the most cited articles, some of them with thousands, even over 10,000 articles have cited this one. Imagine that. So we're just going to select the top 5, just as a quick example. We're going to export those. And here we can include all of the details we would like. And we're going to export it as a bibtex file, the same type of file that you would usually import into your reference manager, like EndNote or Web of Science. Then we're going to take this same file that we just downloaded, and we're going to add it in here to webQDA. Let's start up a new sample project. We'll call it Literature Review on COVID-19. And just to get a quick idea of what it looks like when we import this metadata. Also, to give us a little more to work with, for maybe this first article here, we're going to see if the full text is available to us. So that way we can show how we can import not only the metadata, but also the full text of the article. And since we're looking at COVID, fortunately, many journals are allowing full access to all of their COVID-related articles right now. So can take advantage of that. I'm going to download this whole article from the Lancet. And let's just go ahead and download that too. Whoa, there we go. Now then, back here to our project, double click on it to open it. We're going into this literature review. If you would like a more in-depth look at how this is all laid out, how we would import different kinds of sources, how we can work with other qualitative sources, things like interviews and polls on a Google Forms survey, we can look into that perhaps in a different course. We can work on organizing that for a future date. For now, though, we're just going into let's start with the annotations and here on the notes. This is where we're going to put in our everything we found here for the metadata. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Now, give me just a moment because I need to find those files. Yeah, give me just a moment. Gonna pause the screen share because I need to go digging through my computer for where I saved this file. So give me just a moment and I'll be right back with you there.
Michael, sorry, yes. Excuse me for interrupting. Lucimara is already with us, okay? If you want, you can talk with her, okay?
Oh, okay.
With us, okay.
Excellent. So here, I'm just gonna upload these two things real quick, and then I'll turn the time over to Lucimara to give us a little more information on it. So here you can see we're just uploading this metadata. This is the export that we just made from Scopus on the most cited articles out there about COVID-19. And just takes a moment, it'll upload it here into our sources. There we go. Sorry, into our notes. So just since a large-scale literature review will often involve exporting from several different databases, like perhaps we'll do the same search again in Web of Science and import it here, it's likely that we're going to have some duplicates. So by default, webQDA is already filtering to see if we already have included some of these. But if we go into the included section, here are these 5 most cited articles. And then going back, if we go into our internal sources, here is where we can find that full text file. And again, let me dig around for it just a little bit. Need to find where it was stored here on my laptop. And there it is. And here, going to go ahead and upload that too. And since it's a PDF, it gives us the choice if we want to upload it as text or as an image. So in this case, since it's the full text of an article, better to have it as text. I was working on that. And to kind of wrap up my part for now, just wanted to show how would this look like if we import the two things separately. We import the full text of the journal articles or book chapters or whatever sort of source we're working with. And separately, we import all of the metadata, all of the information like the title and the author and where it was published and the year. All of that information comes in separately. And all we need to do to link the two, when we click on, this is the journal article that we just brought in, and then we just need to bring that one in with its note. That's this button up here to associate a note. And this one is this one up here. That's clinical features of patients infected. That's this first one. So I'm just going to click on it and associate the note. Ask us if we're sure we want to do that. And yes. So now those two things are tied together so that we can just double click. We can take a look here at the full text of the article. We can start highlighting perhaps some of the sections that are specific to a given topic or theme that we're noticing in our literature review. And then when we later go through to analyze our results, it will tie with all of those annotations. It will tie that with the information like the author's name, where it was published, when it was published, and all those sorts of details. This, we can see the view that we have. Let's say, oh, we're going to highlight this section right here. Yes, this section, we're going to give it a certain tag. That's sort of the interface that we've got to work with. So, all right, so I'm going to, at this point, stop sharing my screen so we can turn the time over there we go. Lucimara, thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn the time over to you, and then we'll come back at the end for some questions.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, I think. I think when people have a question, it's possible question in finish a presentation. It's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, we'll do the questions at the end.
Okay. My screen is stay okay?
Yes, we see okay. PowerPoint open.
Okay.
And there's your presentation. Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucimara. I'm from Brazil. Sorry, but my English is not perfect. I hope can you understand me. If no understand me, write in the chat. I communicate better. I'm a nurse and PhD in sciences in São Paulo University. And I work with literature review, different types, and I collaborate in the webQDA software team. This part, I review about the theoric topic about review with us. So the objective is to present an example of literature review with the use of webQDA. Literature review is important for different moments in the research. For example, until you start research, do you need literature review to verify gaps in the science, for example, and knowledge produced, research question, and knowledge gaps. The literature review have different types in the literature. The more common is literature review in general, mapping review, overview, umbrella, scoping review, but have a lot of types. The types of review have different steps in the process, but in webQDA it's possible to complete different steps with webQDA. Review involve a high number of publications, detailed and transparent description, audit and reproduction is very important because in the review, do you need actualization all the time because the technology improves all the time, and scientific evidence products every day all the world. Review with support from webQDA involve 6 steps. The first is review proposition. The second is elaboration of the research protocol. This part is really, really important. The 3 is document selection. This is very important in webQDA because it's very quickly. The Michael presented our example, this process. Number 4 is about quality and relevance assessment of documents. Number 5 is data processing. Is very important because the evidence improve this part, and data synthesis is about a presentation of results. The first step is review proposition. It's possible to use guidelines. For example, I'm a nurse, I use guidelines in my area, health care, for example. Now, have Cochrane, the Jana Briggs Institute, the Campbell collaboration in Brazil, for example, have a specific guidelines. The name is EVIP-NASH. Is very important for evidences about policies in country. The step number 2 is elaboration of the research protocol. The protocol is very important because it is guide of review all the time. The protocol have objective and the method. I use in particular the strategy PCC for construction my question in review. For example, I need put population, concept, and the context related with my study, and define inclusion and exclusion criteria. This is important because, for example, when do you search in databases, to search a lot of studies, 1,000, 2,000, this criteria selection is very important to reduce the number of the articles and read only the article is extremely necessary for review. The protocol involves the search strategy. For example, when Michael writes COVID-19, for example, is one descriptor. In review, it's possible to construct a different strategy for the search. Also, is very important selection of database. Today, have a lot of. The more common is Web of Science, is Scopus, PubMed, ERIC, have different options of database. The research needs select with the database is more important for review. And selection of search terms, for example, in health have mesh medical subject headings. This tool support research to select the correct descriptors I put in my strategy, for example. And the third part, selection of publications. The first, the research needs select title, second, the abstract, and the third, full text. This is 3 steps, is extremely necessary. The first step is put in webQDA in the source systems and the category notes. The document to need insert is very specific, is related with a file format, bibtex, XML, or RIS, because it is related, with a metadata specific insert. This type of file is possible to import direct of database, or is possible do you use reference management. In particular, I use the reference management because I select different databases and save in my Mendeley, for example, and import in webQDA. This example, the search in Scopus. Michael watch last presentation. This is an example. This example in my Mendeley, for example, I export my articles in a specific format. I select all the documents and export in format RIS. And I put in webQDA. Remember, this first step is the sources systems. And the specific local is notes and upload metadata in format RIS, for example. This example. And the very important, I think, in webQDA is automatically the folder literature review. and separate the duplicated publications. The research don't need read the title for title in your computer, for example. The webQDA select duplicated and put the duplicated folder. This is very tricky because when you research different databases, do you have a lot of articles duplicates. And the next step is possible the remain publications will be saved in included folder. The research need write the title and abstract and select include or exclude. When you import for webQDA, you access the title automatically, abstract, and have the DOI or the link to access the article in website. This is a step facilitated to save it in your computer or the desktop. The review process should be carried out independently by two reviewers. This is extremely necessary, with a third in cases where there is no consensus, because when you process literature review, have a lot of articles, and do you need select conforming your objective. For example, I read, I understand, I have a perception, and Michael read is possible have different perceptions. Does need speak about the differences in interpretation. This is very important. In webQDA, it's possible to collaborative work. It's possible team work. For example, in the case, do you select guest? The guest will be allowed to access the codification. Collaborator is the different functions. The collaborator will be able to edit conditions. In the case, the collaborator is necessary the license in webQDA. For to invite the other research, you insert electronic address for invitation is required and is possible to participate of review. Next, this step, number 1, read the title, read the abstract, is necessary. Import full text in webQDA to read all the text. In this case, do you need access sources, but not in the annotation. It's necessary to click internal search because it's possible to save the document in PDF. This is an example of the PDF article. As it's possible to read in your computer and save determinate parts. For example, the research chose the more facility for you. I use the PDF because it's more very quick. I work this form. The 4 steps is about quality and relevance assessment of documents. This is very important because improve the credibility, transferability, safety, and verifiability. In the literature review, it's very important because do you need development, the new review in the future is, for example, actualization of your results. For this, it's necessary to use the instruments or tool specifics and published in the literature. And 5 steps is that the proceeding requires transparency of the methodological process. In webQDA is very easy because do you write the steps to development in the webQDA. For example, I put in sources system, I have a codification. Do you need to speak about the form of your codification? This step of the steps of the review. Do you need the coding system? It's possible create 3 codes, for example, categories and subcategories, and process the articles in webQDA. webQDA is possible 2 categories. Interpretative categories involve interpretation of research, and descriptive categories is about the characterization of the study. For example, country, year, descriptors. In the case of the webQDA, the descriptive categories is automatic. For example, in the case I put my document RIS in webQDA, automatically it is hid the type of document, for example, book, article, journal, different types, year, authors, keywords, and status, included, duplicated, or excluded in my review. This status is very important, the methodology of review. Do you need to describe about the select of studies, the process of select? Sorry. This is more example about the types of articles, years. In webQDA is automatic. When do you use the RIS format or other type? In the interpretative categories, the research need read and use technique analysis for promote these categories, and is manually, but it's very easy to use in our construction of review. For example, here I created the category interpretative about objective of the studies, about method, if it is review or quantitative or qualitative, and area of knowledge, because I work with qualitative software. For me, it's very important investigate what area is very important, or what area use more a specific software, for example. This example, the code maps, I construct my categories, for example, and the webQDA promote the code map. This is good because facilitate the visualization of your result in your article, for example. This is an example about codification. Do you need select the part of text and select your category and encode? Next, do you have the categories and different parts? In the review, this is improve the evidence scientific, because do you read and the construct different categories about your object in our question of research in the protocol. And 6 steps is data synthesis. The objectives this step is summarize, integrate, combine, and compare results. It's possible to use different types, for example, descriptive, narrative, thematic, and content analysis. I think the content analysis is more common in the science in different areas, in health, education. I see frequently. And it's possible the data science in webQDA in the green system, questioning system, have 3 tools about this. the most frequent words, text searches, and the matrix, the question. About most frequent words is very important. When do you need to explore in general the thematic of articles? For example, do you need select 1,000 most frequent words in your documents in PDF, for example, and webQDA construct a cloud of words as result. In the case of my review, it's possible to see the learning, digital, education, technology. In this case, I think my categories involve this word too, because it's the topic more common in my cloud of words. The next step is text search. In this case, it's possible to search double words, for example, qualitative research, collective health, different construction in the webQDA, and the software search in all documents when the word stay. Also, the occurrences of searched texts in the documents. I search literature review and webQDA to demonstrate when stay the word. And the last coding, I like this coding matrix because it improve your analysis a lot of. webQDA allows you to associate different searches and different codes. For example, in literature review, it's possible to search the year of publication and a specific category and explore the differences this result in the case of year. For example, and COVID-19 in 20 have a lot of article, but I think in 21 improve publication. The research needs speak about this in review, the differences of publication all the time. It's possible associate sources and searches, searches and decoding, encoding and decoding. This example, my question is, what is the relationship between the type of document and the year of publication? The user selects the data in the lines and another data in columns. webQDA associate the information. For example, I have more type of documents, periodical article, and the year more common is 27 year. It's possible because the topic is very important, have a special editions in journals, is the different hypotheses is possible to think about this. This is a conceptual map. When to construct the matrices, do you have the possibility prove a conceptual map? This is a type of demonstrate for more easy. For example, have a periodical articles and years in first level, and second level, I see the number of article, this topic for year. Thank you for attention. Sorry, my English. I stay very happy with you. I stay here for question. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lucimara. Here, I think we're about ready for some of your questions. If you're ready, you can start to type your questions in the chat, and we can try to answer those now. I was just thinking, and one sort of question that was coming to me here is about how many sources can we include? Well, Lucimara was talking about how most literature reviews need a large number of sources. The example that I had done here in Scopus, we only had 5 sources. We imported those with no problem. But I was thinking, what if we try from another database, this time with Web of Science? I made a search for COVID-19 again. I limited to the United Arab Emirates and only journal articles. This gave me 358 results, and I simply export to other file formats. I selected all of the records in the bibtex format, and I exported it. I then imported all of that into webQDA, and I wanted to show you what we find here in the descriptors, sort of a summary here. We have how many for each year. And here in the authors, one interesting thing that this can tell us is who has published the most with a relation to the United Arab Emirates about COVID-19 in journal articles. And here we go. We have here with 8 journal articles. And if we click on this person's name, we can see over on the right which references those are. Here is the information for each of those. And the same with each person that we could select. It gives us a number in this summary table, but what I really like about the interface here in webQDA is in most places, when we click on some sort of a tag of some kind, it will show us on the right all of the results or sources related to that tag. So just something I wanted to mention. This case, we're doing 350 some results without any big problems, and we could do more. There's really very few limits to how many we can include in this sort of literature review. So I know that was one of the questions that was starting to come in. All right. One question coming in here is if we can share our PowerPoints. Would we be willing to share them here in the chat in the Zoom meeting? I think that would be okay. I know there are some additional slides that maybe we didn't have very much time to talk about in great detail. So yeah, I'm going to share mine here. Right now it's uploading. I know if Lucimara, if you can share yours as well. We'll share those here with everyone here in the meeting through the chat here in Zoom. There's mine. I think Lucimara's will be along shortly. Very good. Do we have some other questions?
If you want, you can turn on your microphones as well and ask the questions directly. Sometimes it's easier.
All right, while you're preparing the questions, let me also mention we have linked here in the chat this link, this great resource. I'm going to put the link in the chat one more time. We have a free ebook available for literature review in 7 steps with webQDA. All you need to do is go to this page, click on the download button. It is free. You will just need to put in your name and email address, and then you can download this nice ebook as a PDF with information about how to do a literature review in webQDA. This could be a nice summary or sort of a cheat sheet, we might say, to accompany the presentation that we just did. Let me also mention that we do several more advanced training sessions. Perhaps a few of you are interested in some of the other qualitative studies the webQDA can do. At different intervals, we host usually 4-hour courses. One of the next ones coming up, probably going to start here just in a few days. Have to double check if we have enough people registered, but probably going to start here soon. But if enough people are interested here from this group, we can plan a similar course, or perhaps if there are some specific areas of webQDA that you would like to explore more as a workshop with a little more detail, not just what can we do, but how to do it, we can talk about that more if you're interested. And the main package that we do with this sort of a course is that we include a 90-day license to webQDA along with the 4 hours, 3 hours in group sessions and 1 hour as a more private session. that all is usually right around 99 euros. Since our main company here is based in Portugal, we use the euros as our main currency. So something to keep in mind if enough of you are interested, usually with maybe 7 to 10 people at least, we can probably organize a session that could meet your schedule. So just a few things we wanted to mention as we sort of wrap up here. There we go. Lucimara has also shared her PowerPoint presentation here in the chat, so feel free to download both of them. Both of our PowerPoints are there. Any other questions as we wrap up our session for today? I'm going to leave those links here in the chat.